So you're on a twin flame journey and you want to know, are they feeling it too? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Most of the time on a genuine twin flame journey, they are going to be feeling it too, but their level of admission about it, their level of sensation, all depends on how willing they are to express their truest, deepest desires and be seen. And a lot of people struggle there, right? Let's be honest. And then how awake they are to that level of sensation, because remember, this is a powerful soul contract. The twin flame journey is going to awaken you if you're not awakened, or it's going to expand you. But there are those that are coming from patterns and templates of numbing themselves, distracting themselves, just being in the 3D world, and they struggle with this level of awakening. So they might numb themselves, deny and reject and all sorts of things just to keep themselves from feeling, because they don't know how to process that level of emotion. So what happens is you're deep in the experience. You believe that they are too, but they close themselves down and they use brute force. They use addictions. They use all sorts of things, other people, to keep themselves from feeling that connection with you. This is somebody that is a classic runner, and all of your chasing is not going to work. They will literally reject you in your face because they are not open to feeling that level of connection. They might even deny that there's anything significant in your connection because they are not allowing themselves to actually explore. Some of them will even lie to you when you confront them. I know, because I've had people in my DMs say, I was feeling it too, but I didn't want to admit it. That's why there is a recognition and an acknowledgement part of the twin flame journey. And when you're early in this, most of the time, both people keep their cards close to their chest because they're trying to figure out, how do I feel? Why is this different? What's going on? If they're not familiar with these types of journeys, right? If it's like your first one, you're like, what's happening? And then if there's any sort of insecure attachment style, there is a reluctance to actually admit how you're really feeling. So even though once you admit it to yourself, then you're like, do they feel the same way? Are they actually like feeling it too? And there's this whole dance that you guys do. If you know, you know, where it's like you drop little signals, you listen for the cues. One of you has to go first and you have to sort of like come out of your shell. But when you do, you like pull it back and you're scared, and it's this whole process. Once you make it past that phase, the acknowledgement phase, and you reveal your emotions to each other, this is when you are no longer in a one-sided twin flame connection. But up until then, you could be in certain situations. So let's talk about those scenarios. Number one, if your soul lesson is to stop chasing unavailable love, you will be in a one-sided twin flame connection, believe it or not. There might be an initial magnetism, there might be a pull, but then suddenly it evaporates. And you're wondering what's going on. You might call it a twin flame, but then when you meet your real twin flame, we can have a discussion about that later. You might look back and then say, oh, that was a catalyst because it was teaching me something about how I'm chasing after this illusion of reciprocity that's not actually being given to me. Number two, you're on a shadow twin flame journey where somebody is taking advantage of you. They're caught in narcissistic cycles. They deaden themselves, they numb themselves, they destroy the connection. And so, yes, they might feel it at first, but then they slip into these horrible patterns and they end up disconnecting themselves from their soul. And this I do see on the shadow twin flame journey where they kind of become something else. And that something else is really dark and quite frightening. But there was a moment that you connected with the beacon of light inside them, their soul, right? But then they were scared of that because they're not fully in control of their conscious will, their intent. And so they're lost in their patterns and they slip into narcissism, abuse, Yeah. Your lesson there is often about self-love and choosing yourself. And so even though there was a magnetism that pulled you in and you're calling it a twin flame, again, looking back, we might call it something different. But for you in this moment, it feels like a twin flame experience because of how powerful it is and how it's awakening. And that would be correct. It is powerful. It is awakening you. It is getting you to ascension, right? But you do so by ultimately choosing yourself and being in a one-sided non-reciprocated relationship. Number three, and this is more common than you would expect. You have access to the 5D already. You're not new at the spiritual awakening journey. You're perhaps a little bit more advanced. You're an experienced meditator. You access other realms other dimensions, right? A meditation, or maybe you're a quantum shifter, for those of you who are awake to that. And what happens is you feel them in the 5D. When you go into meditation, you have union with them, but the 3D doesn't synchronize. And it doesn't synchronize because of your patterns, stuff gets in the way, or because you haven't shifted into the timeline where they actually exist in the 3D at that level of awakeness. And so you reach out to the 3D version of them and they don't reply. Big red flag, because you think that you're a lot further along with them. Or they reply and say they don't know what you're talking about. Also a big red flag, because you're having all of these beautiful experiences in the 5D, but for whatever reason, it's not actually synchronizing in the 3D. This is a form of a lesson in of itself: discernment, spiritual maturity, and wisdom, and learning how to hold out for what you genuinely want, right? Not just getting lost in the 5D and living this disconnected 3D experience. This is an entire spiritual lesson of itself. So this is another way that it can happen.